We're ready to start with Bianca's presentation. I understand that we've just gone to live stream as well, so welcome to anyone who's joining us via live stream. So we'll just start with some introductions and then we'll get going. So our presenter this morning is Bianca Verwaayen, presenting her fourth milestone in the thesis. We have two external guests with us today. Anne Cormier, who's a principal at Atelier Big City in Montreal and also associate professor and past chair at the School of Architecture at the Université de Montréal. And we have Court Sin, who is the studio director for architecture for FORREC, international practice. And he was just sharing with us how he's happy to be Zooming in his own time zone instead of working at 2 in the morning. The committee for Bianca's thesis is Supervisor Terry Peters, second reader Cheryl Atkinson, and I've been serving as program rep. So we're ready to start with Bianca's presentation. The students present for approximately 20 minutes, after which there is a question and answer and critique session with the guests and the committee, which is another 20 to 30 minute time frame. After which the committee and the guests will meet in private. So at that point, the live stream will end. We'll discuss the project and then Bianca's supervisor will share with her the group's thoughts. So we're ready to start. Bianca, whenever you're ready. Actually, I'll ask all the participants that while Bianca's presentation is going on, you may wish to mute yourselves and even turn your cameras off, which will reduce the demand on the bandwidth. And then we'll have, as soon as Bianca's done, we'll all come back live. Whenever you're ready, Bianca.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Active urban dwelling, variations of body and space for improved well-being. 48% of Canadians aged 12 and over, or about 12.7 million people, are inactive, getting the equivalent of less than a half hour of walking each day. There are many reasons why we are becoming increasingly inactive, such as becoming more digital, working from home, types of leisure activities, and emergence of conveniences, such as Uber Eats, which are eliminating the need to move. Low levels of activity have proven to have significant effects on declining cognitive function, in addition to motor skills and even lifespan, posing a threat to our well-being and quality of life as we age. Cognitive decline is a prevalent issue, as approximately 747,000 Canadians are living with cognitive impairment, including dementia, which is one of the main causes of disability later in life, ahead of cancer, cardiovascular disease, and stroke. The simple solution is physically moving your body. Since immediate effects of activity are transient, the body needs variation and challenge for long-lasting effects. The built world can stimulate and challenge our bodies and minds. However, we are lacking the sense of variety and challenge, particularly in housing, revealing an untapped potential for an active architecture. Acknowledging these facts, it becomes apparent of the flaws in Toronto's apartment housing, since they have increasingly become repeated, bland, and prescriptive in their function, use, and spatial qualities. There are three main areas of critique which must be acknowledged to create an active architecture for urban housing. Current housing, 1, lacks variation, 2, reinforces habits, and 3, views body and space independent from one another. Our apartments are spatially homogeneous, typically consisting of one flat plan that is volumetrically consistent among the entire dwelling. Programs and design conventions are assigned and fixed, limiting variation of alternative uses or experiences and further limiting the use of the body. This lack of variation can be overcome with what Bernard Tschumi describes as a new dynamic conception of architecture, where we reinscribe the movement of bodies into space. When the body in space is dynamic, there is a need for attention to spatial, experiential, or behavioral variation. The designs of our urban housing have made things easier, providing a sense of convenience. However, it has trained our bodies to maneuver around standard dimensions. And as our bodies adapt, it stops sending sensory signals to the brain. It is then that architecture limits our actions and our bodies slip into indolence. It is when we treat our environments with little potential for affordances or action possibilities that our environments become limiting. And by understanding that our environments are the condition for human action, designers can allow spaces to become extensions of our bodies, initiating movement and variation. To dismiss the normative ways of living in apartment housing, the role of the physical environment in creating action possibilities becomes essential, as it gives architecture the agency of engaging the body into a variety of actions, and brings back variety of space and use and well-being measures into urban housing. To incorporate movement and well-being into our architecture, active design plays a role in providing agency to better our minds and bodies. Our current approaches to active design fail to incorporate the variety of ways which our bodies can move and their benefits. This new conception of active design engages the body through many different movements beyond walking, creating more continuity of bodily activity. This thesis tests how a new approach can use housing as an instrument for well-being, and how alternative amenities, qualities, organizations, and design of urban housing afford more physically active and socially engaged lifestyles. James Jerome Gibson coined the term affordances so designers can understand its meaning as action possibilities within the environment, and that composition and layout of surfaces constitute what is afforded. Affordances help inform how space relates to behavior and evokes bodily sensory experiences. Most of Gibson's theory refers to affordances through the material environment. Through design research, spatial and material affordances as it pertains to new housing forms that create new action and behavior were explored. The exercise challenged conventional apartment design by incorporating movement and variety through spaces which interweave, stagger, and afford different orientations, views, elevations, and ways of transitioning, allowing the body to behave in, use, and experience space differently. To afford variety of movement, Gail Nichols states in her active design supplement there are three main physical movements critical for development and well-being. They are manipulated movement, develops fine motor skills; non-locomotor movement, focuses on the relationship of body to a place or object; and locomotor movement, which develops gross motor skills and movement of the body from place to place. Incorporating Nichols' movements while addressing the question of circulation, design research examined active ways of moving through housing. It should be noted there are limits to a degree of activity circulation routes provide and path of travel length. Providing variety and choice allows inhabitants to not be forced performing one action for too long of a duration. Active lifestyles afford benefits beyond our physical well-being. They also inform our mental and social well-being through social connectedness and community. Shared living in this thesis becomes a method to promote active living and well-being. To challenge our bodies and afford new movements, interior living environments can provide benefits to our well-being, as found in Bio's Cleave House. This home has steep and uneven floors with vertical poles to assist in navigation, so that the senses are challenged. It is important to consider challenging our bodies so new movements and experiences are afforded. Movement can be created through flexible interior spaces and elements. For example, Maison de Verre by Pierre Chirot exemplifies spatial division using sliding, folding, rotating, overhead, and retracting elements. Through spatial and material flexibility, opportunity for bodily engagement and spatial variation are provided. Design research explorations of bodily movement and spatial flexibility inform new relationships and organizations of dwellings. For example, Dwelling Study 1 on the left examines movement and hybridization of program and sense, and Dwelling Study 2 on the right explores how access to light, air, views, and use of flexible elements can afford new movement and variety. Building forms, which provide platforms for gathering and volumetric variety, help promote active living through what their spatial and visual relationships afford. For example, the Mountain by Bjarke Ingels group uses this strategy to provide homes sunlight, fresh air, and a view, and similarly, Star Apartments by Michael Maltzan Architecture incorporates public shared space through circulation and terraced floors of residences. To expand on this question of form, the second dwelling study investigates stacking and connecting of volumes to create interlocking apartments. The benefits of the new forms create access to light, air, and views, which creates relationships between people, space, and context. The design project applies this new knowledge to a mid-rise courtyard housing project, which focuses on 5 critical skills, incorporating shared living and variety of environments which afford movement and activity. The design project is developed through 5 scales: private dwelling, shared dwelling, neighborhood, building whole shared spaces, and site, as the courtyard connects with the housing and city fabric. At 183 Front Street East, located between the St. Lawrence Market and the Distillery District, the site is situated in a highly vibrant downtown neighborhood, encouraging with its diversity of programs such as food, entertainment, community, play, and more. Through analyzing the neighboring context, surrounding courtyard housing developments were critiqued. Observations found many issues with connection between the courtyard public space and the city, primarily due to poor access and visibility. To respond to this critique, the design project allows multiple orientations of entry to the courtyard, strengthening its relationship with the city. The building form further frames the courtyard and connects with its surroundings, as apartment units are stacked and varied in height and orientation. Dwellings form neighborhoods which share an outdoor space which is referred to as a neighborhood street. These clustering of neighborhoods create two L-shaped buildings on the site, each which are connected by a ribbon that affords active opportunities for running, walking, and play. The private dwellings are a component of a dwelling block, which is part of a neighborhood. Dwelling blocks vary in height, forming a step facade for access to views, light, air, and frame the neighborhood street, which provides a gradient between the private dwelling and the public city. Each dwelling block has a shared vertical space for the residents, shown in yellow, and private units protruding around this shared core, as shown in purple. At the scale of the private dwelling, flexible and varied environments are created to initiate action and movement, while allowing variety of space and use. The Thesis project consists of a variety of unit types, for example, 3-story mixed block of 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units, 4-story block which is mixed but focuses on singles and couples, and a 5-story family block of 2 and 3-bedroom units. The following diagrams are examples of different unit configurations within the dwelling blocks, highlighting different spatial volumes and orientations to view and daylight. Examining elements of movability and variety of space and use, 2 sample units will be shown, a 1-bedroom, 1-level unit, and a 3-bedroom, 3-level unit. The following 1-bedroom is 44 meters squared and has 3 orientations to view and daylight. The unit provides opportunity for sitting, standing, kneeling, stepping, reaching, climbing, and pulling. Movable elements such as tables, beds, and roof hatches allow for movement and spatial and sensory variety, while the staggering form of apartments allow operable skylights for ventilation. Steps become a means of varying space as well as storage, and indentations in floors become a way of sitting and eating different from our traditions. The usability and degree of movement in this unit is much greater than typical apartments, and breaks past conventional designs focused on sameness and being static. A variety of volumes can provide a range of spatial opportunities for experience and use. The following 3-bedroom is 105 meters squared with 3 orientations to view and daylight. The first of 3 levels of the unit has an atrium as one walks into the apartment. A spiral stair takes you up to the 2nd level, and there is a movable table which retracts into the floor, allowing the atrium to become a dining or open space. 3 options for transition between levels of the apartment are provided: spiral stairs, ladders, and rope climbing wall. We typically step up into bed, but what if it were the opposite? The bedroom requires the body to step, push, pull, and climb. Our traditional methods of circulation should be challenged. A rope climbing wall on a track which can fold up connects 2 volumes together, exercising our physical movements. And a net floor on the 3rd level allows the use of muscle stabilizers since rope has slight slack. Floors for leisure activities don't have to be solid, and the rope allows light, visual, and auditory connections to the activity below. The majority of Toronto apartments are 1 level. However, when volumes are varied, they create a range of active opportunities and spatial experiences, and afford new sensory experiences from access to light, air, and views. The scale of immediate shared space between the private dwellings creates active opportunities and social integration. Each dwelling block shares utility space below with shared living spaces above. This scale informs how proximity of shared space and types of amenity among a small group of residents can spark interaction and can also be a place which initiates action. The vertical space provides opportunities to eat together, move, and relax. And transitioning between floors affords options: stair use, climb wall, and an elevator. Direct visual access to the city and other dwelling blocks are present at the front and back of each dwelling block, further creating connection between residents and the city. Through use of material, color, views, and spatial volumes, comfort and connections are established. Stair use is encouraged, however, choice is provided. The vertical shared core informs both physical and social engagement while providing access to daylight, views, and indoor-outdoor relationships. And due to typically dull apartment entrances, the project provides each unit to have a shared entry which affords utility and storage space. The entry to each dwelling block has a residential feel and is not only a threshold of entry, but a utility space, like a garage where things can be stored and showers can be taken to clean dirty boots, animals, and outdoor equipment, further adding functions to urban live spaces. At the scale of the neighborhood, groupings of dwelling blocks which form 6 neighborhoods further create connection between residents, creating gradients of social and active opportunities. This scale informs how proximities are important variables to improve lived experience. Since the building form consists of a variety of stacked and shifted volumes, variation of apartments is necessary to create a sense of identity through the facade. Each apartment has a feature wall of dark gray, red, or beige brick to distinguish this individuality and variety. To understand the scale of the neighborhood, Neighborhood A will be examined in detail. The ground floor plan shows relationships between entry to dwelling blocks, private dwellings, shared amenity space, and retail at grade. An enlarged plan reveals the different unit types and relationship of private and shared space, showing the variety of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments. The second floor plan of Neighborhood A shows the design of 4 dwelling blocks, highlighting the relationships between the apartments, the neighborhood street, the ribbon connecting the neighborhoods, and the courtyard. An enlarged plan reveals different configurations of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units, which vary between 1 and 3 levels. Each apartment is carefully designed to establish relationships between private and public programs within the dwelling. 3 conditions exist between apartments which face each other. The staggering forms of the dwellings allow for proximities between apartments, which afford privacy and comfort, and private programs within the adjacent apartments, which face one another, are designed to not have window heights at the same level. A transverse section through Neighborhood A shows the relationship between the private dwellings, dwelling blocks, and the shared communal street, which acts as a connective tissue through the neighborhoods. Apartments vary in 1, 2, and 3 levels, affording a range of views and spatial configurations. Relationships between public and private views, as well as private and semi-private outdoor spaces, are established through the staggering housing forms. These relationships establish proximities between housing, the neighborhood street, the courtyard, and the surrounding city. The neighborhood street is an active and social space for gathering, gardening, and play, which fosters close-knit relationships. For communal meals, a few steps outside and fresh herbs can be picked. A longitudinal section through Neighborhood A shows the relationship between the private dwellings and the shared vertical core. Below the housing, retail at grade, and the Front Street portal connecting Front Street to the courtyard are shown. The section examines the dynamic nature of the private dwellings and shared vertical core. By providing small kitchens and dining spaces within apartments, the communal space between dwellings becomes common, social, and active interstitial space. The public and private spaces of the neighborhoods are connected at the ground floor of each of the 2 buildings. Corner neighborhoods are the anchor, acting as the main entrances, central active, and community zones. The neighborhoods of each building connect below grade. This below grade passage is a transitional zone and a storage space to allow the ground floor to be solely for shared amenities. Active and social opportunities are afforded above, at, and below grade. The ground floor plan highlights the relationship between the dwelling blocks and shared amenities below each neighborhood, with the corner neighborhoods acting as the active and community anchor. The arrangement of the building forms further frames the courtyard and affords access with the city. The second floor shown highlights the second level of each anchor and the relationship of the ribbon to the neighborhoods and courtyard. Intermediate stairs allow residents to get on and off the ribbon and access the city. The project encourages connectivity with the street level, and this scale focuses on integrating with the surrounding city through portals, additional crosswalks, and a public courtyard. By creating an engaging courtyard with a variety of opportunities for walking, biking, running, sitting, and social gathering, active opportunities are present and inviting, not only to residents of the housing, but members of the city. Portals allow physical and visual access from the street level to the courtyard. and additional access through crosswalks improves active opportunities. The portals allow for multiple points of entry and exit to the courtyard, providing choice and navigation. Connection between the street and courtyard is established through physical connectivity and attractive murals by local artists that guide people to the courtyard. The portals improve connection between city and housing. From an urban perspective, the entry of the courtyard along Lower Sherbourne Street allows for visual access to the Nicholson Lane portal, and from the neighboring buildings, the dynamic housing forms are expressed, situating itself within the neighborhood. The design of the courtyard further connects residents and the city through the portals, and landscaping guides users along the slope site to the adjacent parks. The courtyard is designed to have access through to the city fabric, such as at the street level, laneways, and public parks, as well as provide direct access to dwellings through walk-up style apartments. The sloping landscape of the site guides people towards the park and provides a range of active and social opportunities. To conclude, this thesis challenges our current notions of apartment housing based around sameness and lack of variety, and allows affordances to optimize how space is used and how active and social opportunities are provided. By being active, we create opportunities not only to strengthen our minds and bodies, but to allow for social connection, a vital ingredient for urban well-being. When we look at active living in terms of shared living, we move away from the idea that your private space is the extent of your living experience. By balancing design variables for movement and spatial variation, the thesis found that new forms and relationships can create new behaviors, consequently creating a new way of living. Variables for physical and social interactions include flexible interior environments, which hybridize spatial experience, use, and bodily movement. Gradients of shared spaces within proximity to the private dwelling afford variety of interaction and activity. Stair use is emphasized and associated with social functions. Choice of circulation routes and difficulty are provided. Visual and physical access to neighbors, city, and outdoor amenities such as parks are afforded, and good sensory qualities within the dwelling, such as high quality and access to light, air, views, and biophilia are provided. Through the investigation of this thesis, it has become apparent we can no longer assume one standard spatial arrangement, and new urban housing forms require alternative amenities, qualities, and organizations which afford more physically active and socially engaged lifestyles. This thesis reveals how housing can help people be active in the city and the home and foster well-being for our minds and bodies. Thank you. Active urban dwelling.
Okay, thank you, Bianca. Sounds like that was on a loop. We're gonna get
I've stopped
an instant replay. Yeah. I guess we should leave your screen up in case people want to ask specific questions about
I'll go to the
particular images. And I'd like to invite our guest critics to start with any questions they might have for clarification. And if there are no questions of clarification, then just proceed with the with the review. So Court and Anne, if either of you are ready to kick us off.
Well, I have a question. It's I'm not sure it's clarification, but I'll ask it anyway. First, thank you for your presentation. It was very well done, quite frankly, very nicely done. And the subject is a fascinating subject and completely and very pertinent. The question of living in housing is huge, and I'm afraid it's changing now, but anyway. And the idea of standard design is something that has been very present with us for quite a long time. There's two issue that you're so I'm not sure I'm in clarification, so Marco, just
it's fine, Anne, whichever, take it wherever you need to go.
There's two issue that I think your thesis is challenging, and I was wondering if you looked at that or not. So there's the challenge of it's challenging universal accessibility, and it's also challenging liability, professional liability. So I was wondering if those two, and maybe it's somewhere in your bibliography, but I was wondering what, if it was there at all. Let's put things this way.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I did look a little bit about the issue of accessibility, and obviously, there is options such as having the elevators and things like that. But the idea is, you can't have a perfect housing scenario for every single person. So this is kind of more catered towards people who want to or challenge themselves to be more active, but it may not necessarily, be accessible to everybody because it is more challenging. But kind of the hope of that was if this becomes a little more normal, things become more challenging, then our bodies are stronger in general and can, we can still move more and not have as many accessibility issues as we're older. So that's kind of how I looked at that point. And I didn't quite look into the professional liability. You mean kind of as architects and designers, what does that mean for our liability?
Basically, if your rail right now, if your handrail are not the proper height, and somebody fall down a floor, you are in trouble. And actually, the builder should not have built it. So just about everything that you propose require a major change in code. So maybe it's part of the scenario. If you live here, you have to, your contract indicate that you're ready to take the risk to live in that new kind of environment.
Yeah, I think so.
Hi, Bianca, it's Court.
Hi.
Can I jump in and dovetail into what
Yeah.
Anne's talking about? Congratulations. That was again, just complimenting you on your presentation.
Thank you.
Very clear and succinct. I just wanted to carry on with Anne's concerns about universal accessibility. It is a key part, especially in this typology, that we recognize that there are people who, genetic wise, it's not really a choice, that they're unable to have the movement that they would like to have. So let's say that you proceed with this as an idea, a concept that is more for able-bodied people. I guess I could follow that. I guess what I'm trying to understand is, beyond the critique of each unit, the shared space seems to be where the fun, the play, the community, the social can happen. And I just wanted to get your definition on what you meant by social, because I found myself kind of getting pulled back into a conversation about activity again, and physical activity. Is there more to what you believe is social?
Sorry.
So like, what is your definition of social well-being? Maybe that's my question.
Social well-being. I think by providing a variety of options that, current typical apartments don't have, saying, it's just a hallway is kind of the shared space mainly, or a few amenity spaces either at the top or, in the basement of the building, that it's basically providing opportunities for people to have social gatherings for, communal meals, having leisure spaces, tending to common plants, things like that, in a environment that is shared between the units, but also has good access to daylight, so it's enjoyable and inviting.
Right.
Kind of the idea of that space.
Right, because I actually did get to deep dive into your document, and what was really interesting, I have it written here, figure 27. It's like a strata elevation of what we commonly see in condos right now, which is commerce at grade. Then there's kind of a little bit more of a podium that's with comprises of commerce, and maybe some public pieces. And then there's, I thought was quite clever, you noted that there's a sliver of life. And for me, that for me was kind of a key point in your thesis. And I was hoping that maybe there was a little bit more to this social integration, trying to bring in, and I'm glad that you're showing how the buildings and this proposition links to the greater urban fabric with the portals and the walkways and such. But if there was a sort of suggestion, it would be trying to figure out ways of maybe tying that shared space with means of access that could resolve some of the universal accessibility issues. So
Sorry,
that
what was the issue with accessibility to those spaces? Because they do have, elevators and stairs that directly give access to those spaces.
Oh, understood. I'm just saying that if the idea is that you'd like to encourage more activity, people who have in wheelchairs, in crutches, etc., they can still be outside and get to their unit rather than just being in an elevator. So I know I'm kind of belaboring this, but I just feel like you are really going in a great direction here. There's definitely a great base here. It's just the shared space for me is a great opportunity to kind of reinforce your overall concept.
Yeah, thank you for that. Just in case it wasn't clear, there actually is connection from the courtyard through a ramp instead of a street like you see in this image where there's the stairs going up. So that actually gives you direct access from the courtyard through a ramp to your unit or to that outdoor shared space and then into that shared core. So there is still, I guess, that sense of accessibility for wheelchairs.
Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry, I didn't see that.
Bianca, could you speak a bit more about the ribbon? Which
Yeah,
is,
sure.
like you have the sliver of life, and then there's the ribbon that does something completely different.
Yeah, so the idea was to have
could you put it
kind of like an outdoor path? Sorry.
Could you put it in plan?
Sure. Yeah, so the idea with this was that it's kind of like an extension of an outdoor walking path, also connecting these neighborhoods together because didn't want there to be a harsh line between the city and the housing and having kind of this interstitial gradient of circulation. So there's outdoor space where people can choose to be a little more private rather than going for a walk out in the city, not to discourage that people go out in the city, but just to give that an extra option. And kind of, when I was talking to my supervisor about this, that it kind of provides that option too in a situation where we are now in a pandemic where you want to go outside for a little bit, but you necessarily don't want that much exposure. So it's kind of this halfway point, which kind of, can have a whole bunch of different options and allows you to go indoor and outdoor, and also go to the different neighborhoods, which means some more social mixing.
Does it connect with those sliver, or is it?
So it's at the same level outside as them.
Mm-hmm.
And so you would have to walk inside each dwelling block to go to that shared core.
Okay, so there's no inside outside relationship at that
at
higher
the ribbon
level.
There is. Just trying to think where it would show the most. But a little bit in the elevation, you see here's the outdoor walkway, if you can see my mouse.
Mm-hmm.
And then, at some points it goes inside here, comes back outside.
But on the plan, can you show it on the plan maybe?
Yeah, so this part is all outside and then this part goes indoor because this is inside. So it wraps through and then comes back outside and this ramps down to the courtyard.
Okay, so can you show again where it is inside? That was not clear to me with your mouse.
Okay, so do you see my mouse?
Yes.
So this ramps up from the courtyard,
Mm-hmm.
and then it takes you around this neighborhood outside, and here is where it comes inside.
You're inside, you're actually
Going,
inside. There's a door somewhere.
yeah, this whole area is indoor
Oh, okay, sealed door there.
recreation space, yeah. And then the door isn't shown here, but it starting here, this is inside, and then this is going outside, and that outdoor port ramps down to the courtyard.
And when it is inside, like just a bit above where you are, above.
So this would be at the level 2 of the building. So it's the same level as this activity here.
Yeah, I know, but in plan, right? Put your little hand just a little bit up-ish. Is it automatic, this thing, or are you controlling it?
Yeah, I'm moving the mouse.
Okay, can you put the mouse higher up?
Yep.
Here.
Yep.
Exactly. What is the space about?
So this is the outdoor street. So this is the pathway, like it's a paved outdoor space, and this is gardening, the green.
Okay, sorry, I missed the inside outside earlier on when you were talking. I thought there was a tube of inside in that location, but
Here, let me see, I can bring up that street. So.
Well, maybe in the EXO you had.
Yeah.
So in a way, is it kind of like a high line? Is it elevated with area development on it, or?
So it is elevated, that's at this level, but it's at the same level as the housing. So it's not above the housing, but it is the second level of the building.
So it's the top of podium.
Yes, yeah, this is that space there at the second level. So the red here is that path going through this neighborhood, which is here. Right. And then this is that neighborhood street with the gardening and all that.
So if you just hold on this image, Bianca. So the
Sure.
the section on the left.
Yeah.
With the two individuals standing and socially distancing themselves on what appears to be, is that a balcony or is that a bridge?
That is the pathway, the red pathway.
That is the red pathway. So it is, so that is elevated above the podium level.
This is all at the podium level.
On the far left, I mean, the drawing.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So Bianca, maybe just to clarify, that the ribbon is ramped, so it changes level, is that correct?
So it's all at the second level, except it ramps down to the courtyard. That's the only part
Okay.
it changes elevation, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, to give that access to the courtyard.
And can you access it from grade, like, you know,
Yep.
datum point 0?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you can go up, just to clarify, you can go up 2 levels basically to get to the highest most level of the red path.
So this is at the top of the first floor.
Right, so it's podium plus 1.
Right.
Is that right?
I'm just trying to make sure I understand correctly. So if the section on the left here, the bottom of this, that is grade.
Yeah.
Okay.
So above that is on the top of the first floor, so second floor.
So it's at the podium level.
So top of podium.
Yeah,
top
of podium, yes.
So if you use your cursor and you go to the top on the left-hand image where the two people are talking to each other with 2 meters apart, that is not the path.
Yes, no, that is not. This is
Oh.
that. Sorry, I misunderstood what you were asking. So that is what you would see here in the image in the middle.
Okay.
That where they are is this upper level. So because this neighborhood, this is the bottom part is where the activity is, like the gym and stuff like that. Up here is where they have their gardening space. So it's kind of a stepped thing because that's also the highest dwelling blocks. So it also gives that kind of stepping notion to have those views and connected to the neighborhood beside it.
Okay.
And Bianca, as this path, the ribbon moves from interior to exterior, are those doors secured?
Yeah, like I wouldn't want them to be accessible to the public because it,
Right. So,
there needs to be a level of security.
even though the path is continuous, you would need some kind of access card.
Yeah, I think, like a card reader or something like that.
And why do you feel that the path has to be curved? Is it to imply movement? It reads as if it's a bike path or a skateboard path, whereas, has it got enough width to accommodate that? Or would those be activities you'd really expect to happen at that level? Or maybe just with young children?
Yeah, I think it definitely can accommodate biking and all those kinds of activities. It's, I believe, 3 or 3.5 meters wide. And basically, yeah, the curved form was to kind of have this winding path through, kind of a more linear project that's boxy, and to, kind of apply that sense of movement.
And I have another question about the grade. You've got grade related units, I believe, right? Both on the court. Some of them are entered off the street other than Front Street, and some are entered off the courtyard.
Yeah.
Because I just quickly looking at some of the elevations, you don't see any doors on the street. It looks like we're always looking at.
In this one,
Yeah.
I'll just zoom in here.
Oh, there is a door there.
Yeah, so it's stepped and, recessed back a bit, and there are doors, yeah.
So that's typically the condition on both Princess Street and the north-south, well, the other 3 streets than Front, correct?
Yeah.
Although you've got retail also on Princess Street. It's kind of mixed up a bit.
Yeah, here, this is where the courtyard entry ones
are. I mean, one of the things in terms of accommodating elderly people or people with accessibility issues, they could be in the grade related units.
Mm-hmm.
There's kind of an evenness though in the way you approach the elevations, that you sprinkle a bit of Front Street's got more retail, but you seem to sprinkle a bit of retail around and mix up grade related units, townhouse like units with the backs of other units, sort of back and front issues. I mean, I think if you were more clear about the relationship of those units, and maybe they have an internal elevator that gets them up to the 2nd level, so they're also connected, that would be
the elevator does go down to the level of the street and the courtyard, so
always through the internal shared lobby space, correct? Like the townhouse like units have to get up to grade somehow to enjoy that, so they'd have to go outside of your unit into the lobby to connect to the shared space, I think.
Let me just bring up the plan.
I guess it's an issue of figuring out the relationship of seems most units enter directly off the lobby, but they could have a second entrance to the street, correct?
So here is a plan of that entry, which would be coming either straight from the courtyard, depending on which way it's oriented, or straight from the street. So either way, there's 2 entrances, either, which can be approached either way.
Okay, but this is the lobby, the common lobby. I'm talking about the grade related units that you can enter directly from the street. Do they also have direct entrances to the lobby, or they would have to leave their unit, go down to the.
Do you mean
lobby.
this is the lobby, or?
Yeah, that's the lobby. That's the common lobby.
This is what you would enter from the street.
I know, but I'm asking about, aren't there some grade related units with doors directly into them, or the ones that are on Princess?
Oh, like the actual dwellings themselves?
Yes. So if
Yes.
I'm an elderly person and I have a unit that I can enter directly from grade off Princess Street, but I want to get up to the second common podium level, do I have to leave my apartment and go outside and then back into the common lobby to get up to the second level to get an elevator?
I think I'm understanding your question. So you're saying that this would be the entry to go into the unit rather than directly from outdoors. They'd have to go through this lobby, right? Correct?
I'm just asking if that's a possibility. It doesn't look like it is. It looks like the lobby
Yeah,
closed off at grade to any units. There's not a direct.
Yeah, it definitely could be an option. I don't have the front doors directly to outside, but it definitely could be accommodated.
Okay.
Bianca, could you go back to like the larger site section or a larger building section? Because I think that might help us kind of talk it through. Yeah, that's great. So what exactly is happening at, let's call it the at grade, podium, I guess is the term. Like it looks like there's a laundry mat, maybe. I believe I saw something about a cafe in a previous plan. How does commerce or restaurants, for me it comes into the term of third places, which comes from sociologist Ray Oldenburg. But are there places that are maybe in between the commune of the living space and then the rest of the city? It just seems like you didn't really touch upon that. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
So in this plan that is just loading. So here is, you have that retail kind of in between the dwelling, and then here's kind of more of those shared spaces for the residents.
Right. So,
Yep.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you can go ahead.
I was just curious, because you are consciously making an effort to kind of break down boundaries of thinking, right? In a way, what you've done is you've turned that sort of traditional sliver of life amenity level, which usually has a gym that nobody really uses, and maybe a movie theater that occasionally people rent out if they're willing to pay a deposit. You've basically turned that from a pancake strata to something that's now turned on its side, where the shared space is now vertical, and it's shared vertically. So I was just wondering why there wasn't a little bit more pushing on the ground plane, because you could have a cafe that becomes the lobby space, or was there a reason for that? Is it because of privacy? Is it?
Yeah, I would say that's probably why it was still separate, because I did look at, in part of this thesis, how much can you merge and blend together, because blending of spaces was kind of part of the exploration, and it's not necessarily practical to blend everything, and public and private, there needs to be some sort of limits, I guess, to the gradients of how much is public and private of the city versus the residents. So I tried to kind of give the residents that blend without it compromising too much privacy.
So just to throw it out there, given our current situation, people working from home, which happened before all of this, there are people who use Dark Horse Cafe to do their work, not only as students but also as professionals. Could there be a relabeling of the cafe into a maker space, or
for sure.
is there a way of kind of, and I'm kind of pulling it another way along the terms of universal accessibility, but is there some sort of sustainability aspect to it? Is the shared space, like you reference well, is there a giant living wall that's trying to help balance out our harsh winters, so that the common space becomes truly a common place,
Yeah.
so that when you're coming through a lobby, it doesn't feel like just another glorified mudroom. It is truly the common space where you meet your neighbors, and then you find yourself ascending or descending within this shared sliver of life. I know I keep on going back to it, but I found that was really quite profound.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's hard to say, that I have it labeled cafe, but there's no say that that's exactly what it'd be, right? It depends on who can rent out the space. And so these are kind of just suggestions, but I think that's an interesting idea that you mentioned, that it becomes kind of more of a free space in a sense.
Yeah.
That it doesn't have to be, kind of just separated. It can be, more integrated, I guess.
I'm looking at this plan and I'm seeing this answers my question about where units on the ground floor enter. And here you're showing all the doors to the units internally coming off the common lobby.
Yeah.
And while that works in terms of the accessibility issue, that people can leave and go up to the next level. It means all the private spaces are facing the common spaces, the exterior common spaces. So your bedrooms are all facing the common spaces. And I think that gets at one of my concerns about some of the elevations, that they're a bit mute. You don't get a sense of identity or of address from the housing, because you never see a front door on the housing typically. I know you showed us one in the exterior elevation you pointed to, but just looking at this plan here and some of the renderings, there's a lot of small windows up quite a distance above floor level, chest height, because you're worrying about privacy issues between units. And it just creates kind of an anonymity to the facades, and I think would also be a bit counter some of the objectives, which are creating community. I mean, it's hard. You're trying to do a lot of things simultaneously. I know.
Housing is a big
So there's
question.
all these privacy issues, but you're also trying to connect people. But
I did, try to address that through the different colored bricks that, highlight the volumes of each unit, so that you can read, a 3-level unit, you can see they're all, say a red facade on one feature face. And then the other one is, say, a 1-bedroom unit, which is, you highlight that with a different color. So through the facade, that's how I try to address that identity of the unit. So it's not all, just giant gray bricks everywhere. But yeah, it's hard to address.
But just I mean, just looking at this one purple unit on the left-hand side of the image, I think part of the issue is because you're entering from the common lobby, that's where your public spaces are, and yet they don't get big windows like you would want in a living room. They're internalized, and the bedrooms are all externalized, at least on this level.
Yeah,
It's just, I know it's quite difficult to juggle all these things, but it's something that I think would improve the dynamic of the facade. You're using the volumes and the setbacks to animate the facade, but we're not seeing kind of generous windows into the public rooms of these units. And not to mention, they don't get to enjoy the views to these nice courtyards you've made for them.
So we're coming up to time. So I'd like to ask Terry if you have anything you'd like to bring up, contribute.
I think we've talked about a lot of the key issues about accessibility, shared space. Maybe one point that might want to just mention, Bianca, is what is the benefit of having this new kind of shared space? Like, what is the impact on the design of the units? I know that's something you thought about when you take something that's typically private and you move it into a shared space. What is the impact on the design of the units?
Yeah, so I kind of looked at shrinking the kitchens and dining spaces in the units themselves to allow that function to come out through the shared space, and to, that it has access to light on multiple sides of that shared space makes it more of an inviting area. So by having that shared space in between, you can allow the units to be reconfigured differently, and prioritizing the light in like bedrooms and spaces like that, because the kitchen and living rooms have kind of shrunk, and it kind of just allows relationships and spark interest between people by making them go to this shared space. I mean, not making them, but providing opportunity to cook together and relax together, and just have those kind of opportunities that could even spark activity for people to say, hey, let's go for a walk, let's go do this outside. So
Okay, thanks.
Are there any final comments from our guests? You need to unmute, Anne.
Always forget that one.
Yeah.
Well, it's a dense subject that you attacked. And it's quite fascinating. One thing I think that happened in the the intensity of the units, because you really obviously work very intensely on different element of the unit and different devices. It seems to me that the project, if you were to keep thinking about it, and always keep thinking about project as they go, is right now it seemed to me fairly introverted. It seems to me that it's really a bit stuck inside, and the will to have movement could move towards the outside. When we look at this plan, all the tone area, the grayish tone area, seems so vast, and everything inside the unit seems so tight that at some point maybe there can be some expansion or transformation of the outside ground to follow through the objective of the thesis you're putting forward.
Yeah, thank you very much for that comment. Yeah, it's something to consider.
I'd just add that I think you really put this together quite well. It's easy to follow, and we understand that you're tackling something that's very complex. I think the only suggestion that I would have is trying to utilize your shared space, kind of make a little bit more open suggestions as to what the programming could be. It is also the opportunity for you to break through in terms of breaking down thresholds, because I think that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to open up thresholds so that it's more inviting. There are opportunities for community to bond with one another. I do agree with Anne. It is somewhat introverted, but with breaking down, like even if you imagine some of these walls that are adjacent to your suggested public spaces or shared spaces that are outdoors, with bifold doors or with sliding panels, all of a sudden the thinking of the stairs that you've suggested, there could be platforms, there could be things that, or programming opportunities that allow for a variety of ages to kind of enjoy the design. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you.
Marco, you need to
We can't hear you, Marco.
Same disease we all have. Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple of comments, and my main response to the project is that it is incredibly complex and goes way beyond dealing with simply issues of mobility and activity. And it opens up a lot of different issues, as you've heard through the comments and responses. Some of those issues are the obvious ones, like accessibility. And this is something that we've talked about at various stages of the project. You know, when I viewed that rope ladder with great alarm, imagining myself tumbling to an untimely death from my bed platform. But the other issues that came up, which I think are really interesting, are the whole question of the kind of social dimension of this, which can be connected to activity, but isn't only or necessarily connected to activity. So I think that by taking on this kind of project, you've taken on a tremendously complex one that maybe too complex, in the sense that it starts to take you in directions that maybe you didn't necessarily start out in, but then you then have to deal with once they present themselves. And so I think that what it shows, I think, is the incredible complexity of a program that we often think of as pretty straightforward. And once you start peeling the onion a bit, you start to understand just how profoundly complex that is. I think you put a very clear presentation together. I think this idea of pre-recording, I think, at least in your case, worked out, I think, really well, both in terms of the clarity and the timing and all of it. So I think it's an interesting experiment to see how these develop. But I think you gave us a good starting point. So at this point, we do have to wrap up. So the committee and guests will convene, Bianca, without you. So Leo, does Bianca go into a waiting room now, or how do we?
I don't know.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so before you do that, I just want to thank Bianca for your presentation.
Thank you.
I want to thank our guests for their contributions and thank the committee. And then we will go off and deliberate. And then Bianca, you will talk with Terry.
Okay.
And I'm not sure how we'll do that, whether you guys will start a separate Zoom for that.
Probably it will work better because we're short on time.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bianca.
Bye.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Bianca.
Bye.
Right.
Okay, now I'm finishing live stream.